The sister said, "You live alone, we're taking the house." And once they kicked me out of my home as a teenager. My parents and twin sister kicked me out of the house when I was 16. I lived in a tent and fought to survive for years. Now I own my own home, but they showed up uninvited with my sister's family, demanding I let them move in. My sister convinced my parents to kick me out at 16, saying there was no place for me. For 12 years I worked hard to have my own space, and now my parents want me to let my sister live with me because she's pregnant with her fourth child. I'm 28, and I've dealt with my parents' toxic behavior since childhood. My twin sister has always been a source of trouble. People say twins support each other, but in my case, she took every chance to drag me down. As if the bullying in childhood wasn't enough, she's back in my life, wanting to move in with her family, despite being the one who insisted I be kicked out at 16. She's always been selfish, and much of that is because of our parents. They dreamed of having a daughter, but I came along too. They openly told me that if it weren't for her, they wouldn't have kept the pregnancy. So, I was born only because of my sister, and she never missed a chance to remind me I owed her my life. You can only imagine what my childhood was like in a home where everything revolved around her. We were the same age, but I couldn't touch her toys. She got new clothes constantly, while I got 2 outfits a year. One for Christmas, one for my birthday. If our birthdays weren't on the same day, mine probably wouldn't have been celebrated. I got the bare minimum, and only so relatives wouldn't judge my parents. The only bright spot in my childhood was my grandpa. He saw through the unfairness and supported me. Sadly, he passed away when I was 13, the worst day of my life. After that, I had no one to stand up for me. We lived in a tiny suburban house, sharing one room with my sister. Well, I had a bed and some space under it for my stuff. The room was filled with her clothes and toys, her posters on the walls. I couldn't complain, as my parents thought they were already doing enough for me. My sister hated my presence, and I was only allowed in the room at night to sleep. Even when I was sick, I couldn't stay in bed, just the living room couch, because she, as a girl, needed her personal space. I counted down to turning 18 so I could leave, but my family wanted it even more. At 16, my sister started dating a 19-year-old guy who'd been kicked out of his home after failing 8th grade multiple times. My parents welcomed him, and of course I had to give up my space. The house had just 2 bedrooms and a small living room. I asked if I could sleep on the couch, but my dad said he used it when Mom's snoring got too loud. That winter, they told me to find somewhere else to live. Her boyfriend added fuel to the fire, saying, "Finding a place isn't that hard. I got kicked out at 15 and made it work. There's something good waiting for you out there." I just sighed. Most relatives lived far away, and my parents warned me not to show up at their doors, or they'd make sure everyone knew what they were really like. I asked friends to let me crash, but their parents didn't want to take in someone else's kid. A classmate living in a garage let me stay for a few months, until his parents found out and kicked me out. I slept on a park bench until the cops found me and brought me home. My parents made up a story that I'd run away, and took me back temporarily. My dad brought an old tent from a dumpster, and said I could set it up in the backyard. It was their gift for keeping quiet to the cops, and not contacting relatives. The tent kept out the rain, but winters were brutal. One night, it was so cold I thought I'd freeze. I knocked on the house door, but no one answered. Desperate, I tapped on my parents' bedroom window, and my dad yelled to stop disturbing his sleep or I'd regret it. I felt awful and, at one point, lost the will to go on. I cried all night. The next day, I started looking for a job that would give me a place to sleep. A bakery 20 miles from home needed a worker for their small production. The owner offered a place to stay and food. They baked bread at home and needed help. I could live in the backyard if I cleaned it up. The place was a mess, flour and sugar everywhere. Not to mention rats, but I was at rock bottom and agreed. I packed my things and left. My sister was thrilled, saying, "Good riddance. There's no place for you here." No one asked where I was going. I cleaned up the yard and made it livable. Getting rid of the rats was tough, but I eventually settled in and felt more comfortable. I had to drop out of school, just months from graduation. Friends urged me to stay in my parents' yard and finish, but I'd given up. I worked hard at the bakery, living off a small paycheck. Soon I realized I needed to grow to get a better job. My dad was a mechanic and I'd helped him with repairs since I was a kid. I saved up, took courses, and got a job at an auto plant. I worked tirelessly to climb the career ladder. Now I'm a supervisor. Recently, An old friend was selling his house urgently due to a divorce. He needed a quick buyer and offered me a great discount with a payment plan for the down payment. I wasn't sure about a 3-bedroom house, but I took the chance. 2 weeks ago, I moved into my new home. Today, unexpected guests showed up. My parents, sister, and her husband. It was a shock, as I hadn't spoken to them in years. They never reached out, and neither did I. My new home is almost 15 miles from their place, so they couldn't have stumbled upon it by chance. I don't keep in touch with relatives, in person or on social media. I think my neighbor, who I'm still friends with, might have seen a photo of my house on Facebook and mentioned it to my parents. I'm not sure how they got my exact address. Maybe my dad asked around at my workplace. When I opened the door, they practically barged in. My mom and dad congratulated me, saying they were proud. I smiled and offered them a seat. I haven't bought much furniture yet, just a bed, a few chairs, and a table. They sat down and asked how I managed to buy a house. They couldn't believe I owned a home at 28 while they're still renting. Meanwhile, my sister and her husband started wandering around, inspecting the place like they were already planning to move in. I asked what was going on and why they suddenly showed up. They said they just wanted to visit. Funny, right? They decided to visit right when I needed them least. Then they shared what's been going on. My dad has high blood pressure. My sister has 3 kids. 14, 9, and 4. And she's pregnant again. Congrats, I said, wondering if I should let them have it, or politely ask them to leave. My mom asked if I was planning to get married, or had a girlfriend. I said, that's none of your business. She replied, why are you so upset? Is everything okay? I said everything was fine until you showed up. She laughed and offered to help me settle into the house if I was struggling. Then my sister chimed in, we'll take the bedroom with the balcony and bathroom. I'm so excited to have my own bathroom. The kids can take the other room. I was stunned. What's going on here? She continued. You've got a 3-bedroom house, and you're alone. You don't need all this space. You used to live in a tent, so one room is already an upgrade. This house is big enough for all of us. My parents cut her off, telling her to deal with her youngest son, who started crying. I turned to them and asked, what's this all about? My mom explained that living together as 5 people is getting tough. My sister's 14-year-old son sleeps on the couch, the middle one with my parents, the youngest with her, and now she's pregnant again. They need a bigger house. I snapped, are you serious? My mom went on, you've got a big house. Why not let your sister stay? I cut her off. No way. I'm not letting anyone move in. My sister yelled that I owe her because I was born because of her. The same old story. If it weren't for me, Mom and Dad wouldn't have had you. You owe me this house. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Thanks for my existence. Now get out, I said. My dad tried to take control, raising his voice. As the man of the house, you're supposed to take care of your sister. I shot back. I don't have to take care of her. But you, as parents, were supposed to take care of me, and you failed. Now it's fine for your grandson to sleep on a couch. But when I asked for that, you kicked me out. I let it all out. How I survived among rats in my employer's garage. How I lived in a tiny apartment for years, and none of them ever checked on me. My mom started crying and tried to hug me. I stepped back and said, leave. I don't want to see you. My sister's husband mumbled, chill, bro. I lived like that for years, and didn't complain. You've got a big house, and you're alone. Why do you need all this space? I gestured for him to shut up. My sister screamed that I shouldn't raise my voice at her husband, adding, get out if you don't want trouble. I kicked them out, not letting them get a word in. I was fuming. They've always been toxic and selfish, and now they're greedy too. But I'm not the 16-year-old kid who follows their orders anymore. If they keep bothering me, I'll call the cop. Update 1. My sister and her husband broke into my house. Someone in the comments asked if my sister offered to pay rent. Nope, she didn't, and she can't afford it. She and her husband are freeloaders, living off my parents for 12 years, and now they want to mooch off me. My parents are clearly tired of supporting her. I saw their frustration during their last visit, but instead of dealing with her, they're trying to dump the problem on me. A week after their first visit, my mom came back. She got straight to the point. You need to let your sister move in. I said, no way. She complained about how hard it is to live together in one house. I said no again. Then she tried to pressure me. You live alone in this big house, and are gone 12 hours a day. What if someone breaks in? If a family lives here, it'll be safer. Plus, they'll help with cleaning dishes and laundry. I said for the last time, no, get out. I don't want to see any of you here. A few days later, a neighbor said he saw a pregnant woman with a man and a boy hanging around my house, suspiciously. When they noticed him watching, they left. I thanked him, gave him my number, and asked him to call if he saw them again. I hadn't installed cameras yet, planned to do it that weekend. Who'd have thought they'd go this far? A couple of days later, my neighbor called saying someone might have broken into my house. I rushed home in a panic. He was right, my sister and her husband had broken in through a back window. She said, "We had no choice. You were being selfish and wouldn't let us in. Now we live here, so deal with it." I was shocked at their audacity. Her husband came out of a room they'd set up as a bedroom and said, "It worked, didn't it?" I lost it and went for him. My sister stepped in front, and I pushed her aside. I swung at him. Their 14-year-old son came at me with a bottle, and I got a cut on my head. It wasn't too bad, but I was shaken. My anger kept me going. Everyone panicked when they saw blood. My sister called my parents to tell them what happened. Her husband and son started cleaning up the mess. My neighbor called the cops. My sister and her husband begged me not to turn their son in. I said, "You're all going to answer for this." The police arrived and took my statement. My sister denied the break-in and attack, claiming she just came to visit with her family, and her son was joking, causing me to fall and hurt myself. She said I was mad at them and falsely accused them. My parents showed up, pressuring me to drop the charges. They tried to paint me as a liar, saying I was using the police to settle a score. Thankfully, my neighbor backed my story, and the police arrested my sister and her husband. They spent a night in jail since my parents couldn't afford bail. The next day, they had a court hearing. I went to the hospital to get my wounds treated. The doctor checked for internal injuries. I took a couple of days off to recover. I sued them for assault and demanded compensation for legal fees. The court ordered them to cover my costs. My parents kept trying to get me to drop the charges, but I threatened to sue them for orchestrating the attack. My sister's son, being a minor, was sent to a juvenile facility for a week, and his parents got a hefty fine. They asked to replace part of it with community service. It's been a week, and things are quiet. I hope they've learned their lesson and will leave me alone. Update 2. Looks like my parents aren't giving up. Yesterday, they showed up at my house again. I slammed the door in their faces. They stood outside for nearly an hour, begging me to hear them out. I finally let them in, though I regretted not just yelling through the window to get lost, like my dad did to me 12 years ago. I asked why they were back. They cried, saying they needed my help. I immediately said, "If this is about my sister, don't even try." They explained it was about them. "Son, I'm getting older, weaker, and can't work like I used to. Our house hasn't been repaired in years. It's falling apart." I cut them off. "Get to the point." They wanted to move in with me, because as their son, I should take care of them. I said maybe I would have if you'd been good parents, but you weren't. I asked what they'd do with their house, and if they'd break the lease. They said they planned to give it to my sister. "Got it," I said. "You found another way to dump your problems on me. First, you tried to push my sister on me. That didn't work, so now you want to move in." They said my sister was willing to pay rent to live in my house, and I could use that money for my mortgage. I replied, "I don't need her money. She should worry about herself." My mom broke down, complaining that my sister's life is getting harder, that she can't even sleep properly because her kids share her room. I said, "That's not my problem. If she's having kids without a financial plan, that's on her." They kept pushing. "You won't agree to anything. Not letting your sister move in. Not letting us stay. You could at least let us live here. This house is too big for one person." I replied, "I'm not planning to stay single forever." They tried to guilt trip me, saying I owe it to my aging parents to care for them. Story 2. Found out about my ex-wife's infidelity the day she was hospitalized, and now she can't handle my engagement. If there was an award for the worst way to discover a partner's infidelity, I'd probably win it and end up in the Hall of Fame. I'll never forget my ex-wife's sister's voice when she called me. I'd just gotten home from a week-long business trip and was completely thrown off, not understanding what she was talking about. After calming her down, she told me my wife was in the hospital and I needed to get there ASAP. Panic set in. I tried to get more details, but she only said there'd been an attack, then hung up. She didn't pick up after that. Some backstory. My ex-wife and I met in our early 20s at a barbecue with mutual friends. She seemed too perfect to be real, stunningly beautiful, shy, and reserved. Our relationship didn't spark right away, but when it did, I was over the moon. Early on, there was a moment I should have paid more attention to. During our first attempt at intimacy, she suddenly burst into tears. I panicked, thinking I'd done something wrong. The next day, she apologized, explaining it was a trigger. 2 years before we met, she'd been in a long relationship with a man who subjected her to emotional, physical, and psychological abuse. He humiliated her during intimate moments, then apologized. She had a flashback, but assured me it wasn't about me. Our relationship grew slowly since she was still in therapy. It wasn't easy, but I loved her and believed that overcoming these challenges would make us stronger. For a while it seemed like it did. A year later, we got engaged. That's when we first became intimate. I got lucky. An inheritance from my late uncle let me buy us a house. Everything was falling into place. I suggested planting a peach tree as a symbol of a fresh start, and she happily agreed. Soon after, we got married, and honestly, it was amazing. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I thought we were especially fortunate. She always tried not to go to bed angry and gently explained what upset her. After some time, I got a promotion at work. It meant more money, but also more business trips, conferences, and meetings. I noticed my wife seemed down, less affectionate. She was glued to her phone and stopped sharing what was bothering her. I tried talking to her, but she insisted everything was fine, just a phase she was going through. I had no reason to distrust her, so I let it go. Sometimes she'd spend the night at her sister's, saying she needed some time with her. That fateful call came on a day when she'd said she was going to her sister's. I rushed to the hospital, barely breathing, asking what happened to my wife. The kindest, most patient cop I've ever met sat me down and explained. He was a friend of her sister and happened to respond to a domestic violence call. When he arrived, he saw a fight and stepped in. I couldn't believe it. My wife couldn't be involved in something like that. She was married, and everyone who knew her would say she'd never end up in such a situation. The cop put a hand on my shoulder and told me to stay calm. The woman at the scene was my wife. I almost laughed at how absurd it sounded, but something in his voice convinced me he was telling the truth. A nurse took me to her, and what I saw still defies description. I froze, like time stopped. The doctor started explaining her injuries. A cracked jaw, her left eye swollen shut with bruising, half her face covered in marks, 3 broken ribs. Then he said something that floored me. She was pregnant. I couldn't wrap my head around how this happened until I spoke to her sister. Under pressure from the cop, she spilled everything. Apparently, her ex reached out 5 months earlier. He was in some redemption program and had to apologize to people he'd hurt to clear his karma. They started talking more, and he convinced her to meet for coffee to show how much he'd changed. Old feelings resurfaced, especially since he looked different now. It turned into an emotional affair. My wife confided in her sister, who told her to take it slow and figure out what she wanted. But 3 months later it became physical. Her sister even covered for her to give her time to meet him. My sister-in-law was in tears, apologizing, saying she didn't know he was abusive. My wife had only told me and her therapist about him. I was numb. I felt nothing, just stunned. When my wife woke up and saw me, she broke down crying. The next few months, I was a zombie, living on autopilot. At her family's urging, she went to individual therapy, and we attended couples therapy. There she was surprisingly honest, sharing everything, how she hated herself for hurting me, how one night, coming home from him, she thought about drowning herself because her clothes smelled like him, and she didn't want that scent to taint me. She said she tried to end the affair but was too weak. Only when she found out she was pregnant did she realize how toxic staying with him was for her and the baby. She decided to cut it off, but that's when he attacked her. After that, she became a shadow of herself. She developed a panic fear of men. Except me, sometimes she couldn't even go to the bathroom at night, unless I held her hand. It was tough. When the baby was born, a boy, we did a paternity test. He was mine. But the more time I spent with her, the clearer it became. I didn't just stop loving her. I couldn't respect her. I no longer saw the woman I married, only the aftermath of her choices. I left because I was afraid I'd do something I'd regret and become like her ex. She begged me to stay, even suggesting a crazy compromise. I could cheat on her in return or take out my anger on her. That cemented my decision to leave. During the divorce, she was surprisingly fair. She moved back to her parents and signed a well-thought-out co-parenting plan approved by the court. 3 years later, I met my current fiancé by chance. I was in a bookstore with a friend, discussing Egyptian mythology, when this incredible woman walked up and corrected my pronunciation of Egyptian gods' names. I was blown away, not just by her knowledge, but because she's Egyptian herself. We exchanged numbers, and it led to a relationship. When I proposed to her in front of that peach tree I planted years ago, she ran inside and came back with a ring. Turns out, she was planning to propose to me because she was head over heels and didn't want anyone else to steal me. My son, in his innocent way, told his mom about it. That same night, my ex showed up at our house, standing in the rain, yelling about how I could propose to my fiancé in front of our tree and saying this wasn't over. I'm exhausted. I can't just cut her out. She's my son's mom, but she's practically stalking me and my fiancé. How do I help her let go of the past, overcome her fear of men, and keep this from escalating to a restraining order? Sorry for the long text, but I'm desperate. One question still haunts me, especially for the wise women in the comments. Why did she make time for someone who destroyed her, only to get hurt even more? Is it normal for a victim of abuse to seek out their abuser, even if they hate them? My ex once said something about it, but I can't recall her exact words. By the way, when my fiancé gave me the ring she planned to propose with, I noticed an engraving inside. To my pharaoh, it touched my heart. I'm crazy about this woman. Update. I didn't expect such a response to my post. Huge thanks to everyone for the support and kind words for me, my fiancé, and even my ex. It's sad to realize my situation with her toxic past isn't that unique. Reading similar stories can make you feel hopeless, but it's encouraging to see that many people have overcome it. My son's birthday is coming up, and he wanted a camping sleepover. He loves nature, hikes, forests, campfires. Given the situation, we couldn't go to our usual camping spot, so I suggested doing it in my backyard. He also wanted his mom to stay overnight. He wanted to recreate a scene from his favorite kids' adventure show, where both parents sit on either side of the kid, roasting marshmallows by a campfire. I didn't want to deny him on his birthday, but I couldn't let my ex sleep in the same tent as us. That would have been disrespectful to my fiancé. Though she said she understood, I could tell it bothered her. My ex seemed to take advantage of the situation. She kept emphasizing her presence, saying she couldn't wait to spend the night with her two men, and even bought a ton of camping gear. She was clearly trying to get under my fiancé's skin, and she wasn't subtle about it. I told her to stop several times, but she only backed off when I threatened to invite her sister. Since our divorce, my ex blames her sister for ruining our marriage. She admits her fault in the infidelity, but thinks her sister, by covering for her, pushed her toward the wrong choice. In her mind, her sister destroyed not just her life, but our family. She even bans her sister from spending much time with our son, which once drove my sister-in-law into a deep depression. My sister-in-law has been trying to mend things for years, but it keeps getting worse. Someone in the comments suggested a simple solution: get a multi-room tent so my fiancé could join the camping. I jumped on the idea. Of course, my ex wasn't thrilled, but she was okay with at least being under the same roof as me for the celebration. My son was over the moon, running around the yard, pretending to be an explorer discovering new lands. When it got dark, I started a campfire, and my ex brought marshmallows. My son sat between us, roasting them. But then something unexpected happened. After we took a few photos, he handed the marshmallow stick to my fiancée and sat next to her. Honestly, it's a mystery how such a pure, bright kid came out of the chaos of my relationship with my ex. My ex asked to talk privately. We went to the kitchen, and she apologized for her behavior the day I proposed, but not for what came after. She said that in her mind, I'm still her husband, and the thought of me giving my heart to someone else scares her. She swore she never meant to hurt me, and would give anything to go back and fix her mistakes. She mentioned how happy she was when the paternity test confirmed our son was mine, seeing it as a fresh start for us. I thanked her for being open but said I'm happy with my life and my fiancé. I genuinely hope she finds someone who makes her happy. She reminded me of what she said on our divorce day. She'd wait for me. I left the kitchen drained. My words didn't seem to sink in. We wrapped up the evening. My fiancé and I slept in one room of the tent. My ex and son in another. For him, it was the best birthday ever. For me, it wasn't the easiest night. That's all for now. If anything else happens, I'll update. Sadly, the author didn't share more updates, so the story ends here. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this situation? I personally don't get why she cheated. It's beyond me, so I'd love to hear from those who might understand. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Check out our previous video, linked here, and good luck.